She's the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York. Follow her voice, a straight dog is nice. She's a pushy broad from the Bronx, oh yeah. Don't be surprised if you wanna listen twice. Make decisions, find the right choice. Know yourself better, find your own voice. It's okay if you need help today, cause everybody needs a little push. From the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York.
Good morning, Wednesday. I never get tired of my theme song. Welcome, Transformation Talk Network listeners. My name is Ellen Stewart, and I am the pushy broad from the Bronx. Welcome to my show, Recovery Recharged, where we share advice and support from experts in addiction, recovery, and life. I know that there are so many of you that are going to relate to this program today. It is rather a serious note, but of course it has a happy ending. I want to talk about surviving alcoholic parents with a very special guest. I know, and she knows, that surviving alcoholic parents takes open dialogue, self-care, and self-love. So, of course, the Pushy Broad brought in an expert, someone that has written many books about this subject and her own personal experiences in also surviving alcoholic parents. This is going to be a very compelling interview. Let me tell you all about Tammy Vincent. She's a best-selling author, speaker, podcaster, life coach, and NLP practitioner. She has transformed her life after growing up with two alcoholic parents. She has over 30 years of education in healing. She uses her compassionate coaching to lead others towards self-reflection, self-love, and empowerment. She is advocating through her podcast, Adult Child of Dysfunction and Trials to Triumph, her impactful message, which she's going to share with us today. And I'm going to have her talk about the 4 books that she has put together, because you have to go out and get it. The Pushy Broad from the Bronx, Recovery Recharged, welcomes my guest today, Tammy Vincent. Good morning, Tammy. How are you?
Good morning, Ellen. I'm fine. I hope you're doing well.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad. So let's kind of start from the beginning, right? I know you have a tumultuous background. Talk to me a little bit about what that was and what the pivotal moments were that you found that you had to actually do something.
Well, it was tumultuous from day one because my mother was a violent alcoholic, abusive, locking me in closets, doing that sort of thing. But it wasn't until I was actually getting ready to have my first child that I realized I didn't understand major life concepts like unconditional love and boundaries and love at all, really. So that is what threw me. That was the aha moment that threw me into the 30 years of healing.
All right. So let's just go back for a moment. You said mom was a tumultuous alcoholic doing horrendous things in terms of child abuse. How old were you with your earliest memory of that?
My very earliest memory was when I was in preschool and my brother had gone off to school, and every day my mom would watch Days of Our Lives and make me soft-boiled eggs, and I couldn't stand them. So every day I would either get spanked, locked in a closet, had them physically stuffed down my throat, and sometimes I was in the closet until 9 o'clock at night. So I was 5.
You were 5 years old. So you began to realize that something was not right, but even then you really didn't know any better. And it took you until you had your first child to realize that this was unacceptable behavior.
I realized it right away, but I was a child. I was kind of at everybody's whim, and I didn't have, back then you didn't say anything. You didn't tell anybody, you didn't talk about it. So I was really at the mercy of the people that were taking care of me, and all of them failed me.
And what about your father?
My father was an alcoholic as well. He was not a violent or abusive alcoholic, but I say that in the nicest way. He never did anything physically wrong to me, but he emotionally was not there to do anything right because he was battling his own demons. And I loved him till the day he died. So,
Is your mom still alive?
no, she passed when I was 17.
Okay. All right, so, wow, unbelievable. And you have one sibling?
A brother and a sister.
And did they both suffer from this abuse as well?
We suffered all in different ways. They both are in recovery. Congratulations to them, one for 7 years and one for 30 years. But if you put us together in a room, we actually never spoke about our childhood ever until just the last 2 or 3 years. And I'm 55 years old. And we never said a word about it because if you put us in the same room or in different rooms and ask the same question, you would never even know we grew up in the same house.
Everybody was treated differently under this abuse. So,
Absolutely.
so these are the kinds of things that you went through. Give us examples of some of the things that you have seen, because I want our listeners to be able to associate and maybe identify for those of you that are struggling with adult parents who are alcoholics. So talk a little bit about some of the symptoms, what you saw, what you experienced.
I can give it just a couple small examples. One, we were at a ball field and my mom dropped her pants because she got stung by a bee in front of like 700 people. And this was when I was in first grade. And my dad was trying to console her and get her pants back on. And she was just throwing out these words that nobody at that ball field should have ever heard. But it was never even mentioned. There was no apology. There was no explanation. There was nothing. So, literally, from first to fourth grade, when we moved, I was completely ashamed to be out in public. I wouldn't go to the store. I wouldn't go to birthday parties. I wouldn't go to a friend's house for fear of somebody recognizing me and my mother and put the connection together.
My goodness, it's just unbelievable. So then you took the time to decide you wanted to write about it. How early was your first book? Tell us a little bit about that.
Believe it or not, my first book was just recently. I just wrote, I have two more to publish and I have two published, but I wrote my first one because was teaching and I saw the pain in the kids. And I realized so many kids are struggling right now and they don't have a place to go. But honestly, I waited until my father passed because we never even discussed it. He said one comment to me one time that he knew he was doing irreparable damage to me and didn't know how to help me. So we never discussed my childhood. So I waited until he passed, until I could really go out and scream from a rooftop how badly these kids needed help. But I didn't want to hurt him.
Tell us the name of of that book.
Surviving Alcoholic Parents. It's a teen's ABC guide to surviving in the world of chaos.
And where can they find it?
They can find it at my website, tammyvincent.com.
Tell us one more time the name of the book.
It's Surviving Alcoholic Parents, a teen's guide to thriving in a world of chaos.
Let's rush out and go get that, especially even for adult parents that want their teenagers to take a look at a few things, or they want to go back and help heal from the trauma that they have gone through. All right, tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So my podcast is called Adult Child of Dysfunction. And what I realized when I started it, it started all about alcoholism and addiction because that's my story and that's most of my coaching clients. But what I realized is there's so much dysfunction in this world right now with suicides and drug overdoses and homelessness and job losses that when children grow up in that, the dysfunction, no matter what the dysfunction is the same. So the everlasting effects are the same and they all need to be healed. So now it's just stories of hope and healing and thriving and people having a beep life and then moving on and having and making it better.
So speaking of hope and healing, with everything that you went through, when and how did you begin to heal?
I threw myself into every single healing modality I could possibly do. So I
Like
went
what?
to hypnotherapy. I went to go to traditional talk therapy. I learned Reiki. I became an NLP practitioner. I learned reframing and literally everything I could do, grounding exercises, meditation, yoga. I threw everything at the wall to see what would stick. And so much of it stuck so quickly. So now I can help people fast forward that process.
And how young were you when you decided that you needed some help?
26.
Okay.
I was pregnant and reading that book, I Love You Forever. I don't know if you ever read it, but it's a book about a mother's unconditional love for her son. And I realized I don't even know what that means. And that's when I realized I needed help.
Do you have children? You have children of your own?
3.
And how do you think they're doing?
They're doing great because I had those hard conversations with them when they got old enough to start being exposed to alcohol. I warned them of the dangers, how it was a generational curse, and how mom was the one that was stopping the generational curse, but that they unfortunately were sucked into it by default, so that they have some healing to do themselves just because it literally changes the whole family dynamic. So I was very honest with them from the beginning. And I think because of that, and they watched me healing, I started, I was going through my beginning stages when my first son was born. So he took he was my guinea pig.
Well, for good things, right? You threw all the good hopes, the hopes of spirituality, the unconditional love, all of that stuff on him. So that's a really good thing. So with everything that you went through, what made you decide to shift to become a coach or a mentor?
Because I realized I was actually at the airport and I was doing EFT tapping with a total stranger that was afraid to fly. And my friend said to me, Tammy, you've been accumulating tools to help people with anxiety and stress and depression and all of the stuff that healed you for 30 years. How about you use it on somebody else? And so I decided, you're right. I do have all of these tools, and it shouldn't take 30 years. I can give people a couple hints and tips that can jumpstart and change their lives almost immediately.
And of course, your niche is to work with adult children of alcoholics, and you work with them nationally, you work with them virtually.
I do all of my work pretty much virtually. So I have clients in Australia and New York and California and right here in Florida.
And where can they find you if they want to work with you?
Everything is housed under my website, which I made very simple. Is just my name. So it's www.tammyvincent.com.
Terrific. So tell me, after everything that you've gone through and everything that you've learned, tell me some of the characteristics that you feel you've developed as a result of your upbringing. What are some of the positives?
Some of the positives now are that I have a backbone where I didn't for a long time. So after my healing, you become a chronic people pleaser when you go through this because you're just constantly trying to make the peace and keep things straight and keep things steady and calm. So you give to everybody but yourself. So now after all this work, I'm much more confident. I can say what I want without fear of rejection or not being liked. I also have a ton of resilience because I've learned to just look at life with an attitude of gratitude, and I can bounce back from just about anything because did so much work to just look at the positivity of things and to be thankful for what I have. So I've really developed a lot of resilience.
So just talk to me a little bit more about what some of the traits are that when people go through this with parents, and you talked about the fact that you were a people pleaser. What else is indicative of someone that's processing the trauma of alcoholic parents?
A lot of it is being afraid of authority figures. A lot of it is, again, not being able to stand up for yourself, getting into toxic relationships because your brain is a magnificent organ, but it would rather be comfortable in familiarity. So you attract people like yourself. Like I said, give to everybody but yourself. You have a lack of self-confidence, sometimes even a lack of self-identity because you're just completely codependent and addicted to making sure everybody else is okay around you. And those are just some of the small ones. And then there's a whole list of physical ones. But for people listening, if you've never heard of the laundry list, look it up, and it's 13 traits that really spells it out. And it's kind of a very good self-assessment to see if your past is kind of dictating your present.
That's really good for us to know. It's called the laundry list, you said. Take a look and see. Okay. All right. So you've done so much to heal. What are your top things? What do you think have been the most important in your healing process?
One is having that attitude of gratitude. So before I get out of bed every single morning, I find 5 things I'm thankful for immediately, because then as things come at me, whether it's another person that's doing me wrong or I think is doing me wrong or another situation, I can find the good in that. The next thing was journaling. And I know people are like, well, that's kind of basic, but journaling literally saved my life because what I would do is I learned to get in touch with my inner child that was still inside of you that is hurting and damaged. And I would write letters and just basic conversations back and forth with myself, with me and my younger self, or me and somebody I had harmed because I developed a lot of bad habits. I did things out of survival mode that I wasn't proud of. So I spent thousands of hours journaling, and I still do to this day.
I think there's some very good things for us to realize out there. And we've always believed in the spirit of journaling. This show is Recovery Recharged. I am in recovery for 38 years, and I am an avid follower of 12-step recovery. That's me personally, even though I practice smart recovery and all kinds of other things that I bring to my clients. Do you find that the 12-step programs for adult children of alcoholics, the ACOA and the Al-Anon rooms, have helped you in your recovery?
They really did. At first, I started with Al Anon, and what I realized there was that it was really beneficial, but it was more for people in the active stage of dealing with someone with an addiction. So I moved over to ACA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics. And that dealt with more with healing the inner child and going back and actually healing what's going on that happened in the past. So it's going back and re-establishing that self identity and building yourself back up from those bad habits. It's not just dealing with just the present. So I mean, I still listen on, I do most of them online, but I will jump in on an Al-Anon meeting occasionally, but I do a lot of ACA meetings because there is nothing more powerful when you're trying to heal than to have a community of people that get it. Absolutely not.
I've been doing this for several decades and I didn't even realize that ACA exists. Is it aca.org for those of us out there?
Yes.
Okay.
Or
Adult children of alcoholics, go take a look and see if you really need it, especially like Tammy said, if you're beyond living at home, if your parents are deceased or you're older and you're outside and you want to go back and do your inner child healing, that inner child work. Great. So many people think that once they go through an experience like that, that they grow up dysfunctional and there's no place for them to go and they don't know how to break out. They tend to feel like they're stuck. What do you say to people like that?
you're never stuck and it is never too late. I have a client that is 74 years old and just said to me, for the first time in my life, I feel like I have my life back and I am in control. There's also no stopping point. There's no, I'm healed. There's no more work to do. It's a journey because, in my opinion, God is going to throw me whatever I can handle, whatever layers I can handle as I handle them. But the most important thing I want to tell people is none of it was your fault. Any of the stigma and shame attached to it is ridiculous. And you deserve and you are worthy to get the help. So join a group, listen to these podcasts, listen to radio stations. We're in an age of people coming out and people sharing their stories and saying, it's okay, I'm with you and I hear you. So you're worth it.
In recovery, we say the opposite of addiction is connection. And this very definitely would be the same kind of connection. So, again, one more time, please tell us the name of your book and where to find it and the name of your podcast.
The name of my book is Surviving Alcoholic Parents, and you can find it on my website, which is just my name, tammyvincent.com. And the podcast, and you can find it on any major podcast platform, is Adult Child of Dysfunction.
Okay. So now, if you were to give advice to people struggling in that way, I know you talked about a few things, but is there one piece of advice that really stands out for you if somebody is struggling as an adult child?
Besides the fact that you are absolutely worth it, it's that you have to make the choice and you have to be willing to do the work. So you're going to have to sit with some unpleasant things, and it's okay. Every unpleasantness, every bit of healing that you do is one step closer to you being happier. So you do have to make the choice because happiness is a choice.
How many people come to you? I'm curious about this. How many people come to you and because they have been abused, now have, like we said, because of family, genetics, environment, how many active alcoholics do you deal with that have gone through this?
Right now, a lot because I'm actually collaborating a little bit with this grief support group, and just that one dynamic, you'd be absolutely amazed. I mean, they say that right now, 1 in 4 children has at least one addicted parent. That is astronomical. So what that means is that 1 in 4 adults are suffering with some kind of addiction, and it's generational. So most people that are suffering from a substance abuse disorder have parents that did too. But it's hundreds of people.
So tell me, when you said you're pairing with a grief support group, tell me about the dynamic. Where does this come into play?
So my good friend has a grief support group, and she's called the Positive Widow, and so she is a group that helps people that have lost their spouses. And she actually came across one of her clients that said, I was going to take your course, but I was kind of teetering because I'm going to be honest, I've relapsed, I'm drinking again heavily, and I think I need the support there more. And she just said to her, she said, believe it or not, she said, it's a lot of us. Because what do we do when we're grieving? We drink. What do we do when we're being abused as a child? We drink. It starts as just a coping mechanism before it turns into an addiction. So that's there I don't even think about the number of all these different demographics of people that are going through, losing a spouse, losing a job, all these things that turn us to alcohol.
And then they realize that one of the reasons why it happens is because that's the family, that's the background that they've known. Sometimes they don't associate, but when you help them make that association, therefore begins the inner child work and the family of origin work. Okay, so somebody's listening to us today and thinking, maybe that's me. Maybe I should get some help around here. Tell me what first steps you would advise somebody to do if they want to start out and start the process of healing?
I would say start listening to podcasts. Start listening to, anything you can get your hands on as far as learning, and go to the laundry list. And that's your first step. Go to the laundry list and look at it and go, okay, yes, I've got 11 of these 13 characteristics. And then just start becoming aware, start journaling, start looking at the things like one of the laundry list items is that you have trouble expressing or feeling emotions. So start sitting with your emotions. That was a big one for me. Children that grow up in dysfunctional households are told, and even adults, we're told to stifle and to swallow our emotions. Start feeling them, because until you start feeling them, you cannot release anything. You have to really start feeling it in your body, or just feeling it. You got to start feeling and being aware. Awareness is the first step.
Okay, so top 3 rules that you think everyone should live by, especially, of course, adult children of alcoholics. We have about a minute or so. Let's sum up the top most important things.
1, live with an attitude of gratitude. 2, know that you are 100% worth it. And 3, know that you can live your best life, but you have to make a choice that you want to be the happiest version of you.
Well, Tammy, you are certainly living proof that everything that you have done has gotten you to a point that really transforms you. So let me just ask you something a little personally. Did you struggle? Did you struggle with an addiction? Because I know you mentioned your siblings, but was this something that you had to overcome?
I realized very early on I have the what I call the addictive tendency. So I use different things as coping skills. So yes, I don't drink very much now. I'll have an occasional glass of wine, but I went through my period where I was making very bad choices and drinking way too much. And what I found, and what I work with a lot of people with, is when I stopped doing that, turned to gambling. And when I stopped doing that, I turned to food. So until you heal what actually causes the very first addiction to set in, it's just one after another after another.
Of course. Okay. So, Tammy Vincent, Adult Child of Dysfunction podcast. Tammy Vincent, Surviving Alcoholic Parents, a Teen's Guide to Thriving in a World of Chaos. Unbelievable. All right. So, Tammy, I am so thrilled you came on today. You were extremely informative. Go visit TammyVincent.com. Let her work with you. I wish you all the best and the success on the next 2 books. And you are definitely someone that has given us very impactful information today. Thank you so much for being with me on my show. And you guys out there, we'll see you next time. This is Ellen Stewart, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, saying thanks for listening. And remember, everybody needs a little push.
From the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York.